Hi there, welcome to TK's Thoughts. Today we are going to look at the mysterious Federal Reserve. Now, have you ever wondered who controls the interest rates and why the stock market always reacts whenever the Federal Reserve sneezes? Now, before we continue, I'd like to say that I'm not an economist, I'm not in finance, I'm in human resources, and I'm just a regular citizen that wants to make sense of something that affects all of us. And that is the Federal Reserve and what it does with our interest rates. And you see headlines like the Federal Reserve raises interest rates, or the Federal Reserve signals policy shifts, or it always, for some reason, has an impact on your rent all the way to your retirement. Okay, so in this video, I am going to explain what the Federal Reserve is, what it does, and why it matters without using all the financial jargon. All right, let's get right into it. So the Federal Reserve, also known as the Fed, FED, was created in 1913 after a series of financial panics. But then banks were collapsing, people were losing jobs and savings, and there was no system to stabilize the economy. So Congress passed the Federal Reserve Act to give the country a central bank, a financial referee, if you will. So the Federal Reserve has two main parts. First, the Board of Governors in Washington, D.C., and they're appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate, right? And second, there are 12 regional Federal Reserve banks across the country in cities like New York, San Francisco, Dallas, right? The most well-known in the chair is the chair of the Federal Reserve right now, and that's Jerome Powell. And he's kind of the face of monetary policy in the United States right now. And the Federal Reserve is technically independent, right? But it reports to Congress. So it's not totally off the leash. Well, now the claim is independent. Yeah, they're independent, right? So if they are independent, why do people think they're a government body? Interesting. As we saw earlier, right? The stockholders receive dividends, and we know they're independent. So these are private citizens, and they own those 12 banks, and they really have nothing to back up the money that they're printing and making you and I pay interest rate on it. Wow. Interesting stuff. So now let's take a look at this interesting video, and it says our entire monetary system is nothing but a form of legalized theft. All right, so let's watch this video and try to make sense of what the Federal Reserve really does.
Gains to the issuers of money. This is a fraud. It is a pyramid scheme, it is a Ponzi scheme, it's a scam, and it's a lie. Our entire monetary system is nothing but a form of legalized theft. But here's the biggest con job of them all. The Federal Reserve is not federal, it has stockholders. There is no federal agency that has stockholders.
Exactly.
What's a stockholder? A share of stock represents a percentage of ownership in a corporation. So the stockholders are the owners of that corporation. Therefore, the Federal Reserve is a private corporation with owners. And you can see it for yourself if you go to the Federal Reserve's website, and it will say, the stockholders receive an annual dividend of 6%. Now, we know that the stock in the Federal Reserve was originally...
I'm going to pause it right there, and then I'm going to go to the website and take a look. Because sometimes when these people make videos, people don't believe them. I always encourage people, go to the website and see for yourself. Most people don't really go to government websites. That's why mainstream media can come up here and lie to us to our faces, because people don't really go to government websites. They don't know the statistics of information, right? Especially when we talk about gun violence and a bunch of other things, financials, everything. It's all the data systems, and people do not go to government websites where all the information is kept, and they know that. They know this. That's why they can lie to you to your face. Now let's go to that website and see what's in it. So now this is the deal. When you get on the Federal Reserve site, you are going to be lost in translation. This is the information overload that they throw at everybody because they know you're never going to read all of this. So you're going to go there and you're going to type in, I already did it earlier, you're going to type in the Federal Reserve Act, and then you're going to type in Section 7, and then you click search. And then, of course, it'll take you to Section 7. And where is my Section 7? Section 7. Section 7. I believe it was on the second page. Okay, here it is. So Federal Reserve Act, Section 7, Division of Earnings. And you have stockholder dividends. Okay, and then you have here a dividend amount after all necessary expenses of a Federal Reserve Bank have been paid or provided to stockholders of the bank shall be entitled to receive an annual dividend on paid in capital stock of the rate equal to the high yield 10 years, and then a 6%. Yeah, stockholders of our Feds. The Federal Reserve has stockholders that earn dividends. Okay, so that's what you do. They load you with all this information because they know no one will ever come here. Has anyone ever thought of coming here? Just in a few years that a couple of people started to expose this information to people. It's always been there since 1913. And people are waking up. They're waking up to the fact that these government and these, not the government, these bureaucrats are actually the oligarchs. That's who's stealing our money, claiming to be the government when they're a private body. Now let's continue with that video.
And it will say, the stockholders receive an annual dividend of 6%. Now we know that the stock in the Federal Reserve was originally issued to the largest banks in the United States. But because of mergers and acquisitions through the years, you can't actually trace who owns the stock in the Federal Reserve. That's a very closely guarded secret. My guess would be that the owners are those primary dealers, the banks that get to make a profit by selling part of our national debt, those bonds, to the Federal Reserve, who buys them with a check from nothing. Then we pay tax to pay the principal and the interest on those bonds so that the Federal Reserve can pay the banks a 6% dividend. Don't be alarmed if you don't quite comprehend the deception of this system at first glance. Very few people do. It is purposely complex. The economist John Maynard Keynes once wrote, "By this means, government may secretly and unobserved confiscate the wealth of the people, and not one man in a million will detect the theft." I believe that presented correctly, anyone can understand this system, regardless of how complex it is. So let's do a recap and break it down even more. The way the system works is that, step 1, the government creates glorified IOUs. These bonds increase our national debt and put the public on the hook to pay it back. Step 2, IOUs are swapped to create currency. The Treasury sells the bonds to the banks. The banks then turn around and sell our national debt at a profit to the Federal Reserve, which they probably own. The Federal Reserve then opens its checkbook that doesn't have a penny in it and buys those IOUs with IOUs that it writes, checks, on a checking account that has a zero balance. Then they give those checks.
Let me pause there really quick. So in the layman's terms, okay, this body prints money and we pay interest on it. Wow.
To the banks, and currency just springs into existence, and then the whole process repeats. This results in a buildup of bonds at the Federal Reserve and currency at the Treasury, which is really just a supply of numbers. The Treasury then deposits the numbers in the various branches of the government, and we get to step 3. The government spends the numbers on promises, public works, social programs, and war. Then the government employees, contractors, and soldiers deposit their pay into the banks, and we get to step 4, where the banks multiply the numbers by magically inventing more IOUs through fractional reserve lending, where they steal a portion of everyone's deposit and lend it out. That currency gets redeposited, and then a portion is stolen again, and the process repeats over and over, magnifying the currency supply exponentially. Then we work for some of those numbers, which brings us to step 5, where our numbers are taxed. We pay tax to the IRS, who then turns our numbers over to the Treasury, so the Treasury can pay the principal plus the interest on bonds that were purchased by the Federal Reserve with a check from nothing. Then we get to step 6, the debt ceiling delusion. The system is designed to require ever-increasing levels of debt and will eventually collapse under its own weight because politicians always kick the can down the road. They don't want it to collapse on their watch. And finally, the system is designed to require ever-increasing levels of debt and will eventually collapse under its own weight because politicians always kick the can down the road. They don't want it to collapse on their watch. And finally, step 7, the secret owners take their cut. The world's largest banks own the Federal Reserve. Those banks make a profit selling our national debt to the Fed. They make a profit when the Fed pays them interest on the reserves held at the Fed, and the Fed pays them a 6% dividend on their ownership of the Fed. This system is fundamentally evil. It funnels wealth from the working population to the government and the banking sector. It is the cause of the artificial booms and busts of modern economies, and it causes great disparity of wealth between the rich and the working class. And it is only possible because we no longer use real money, we use currency. But worst of all, it is a form of enslavement. Bond is the root word of bondage. Whenever a government issues a bond, it is a promise to make us pay tax in the future. Nobody asked you if you wanted to pay tax today for the prosperity we all enjoyed in the last century. Nobody is asking our children if they want to work hard in the future to pay for the prosperity we're enjoying now. George Washington once wrote to James Madison, "No generation has the right to contract debts greater than can be paid off during the course of its own existence." By stealing prosperity from tomorrow so we can spend it today, we enslave ourselves and future generations. Now this all sounds pretty bad, but there is great hope, for you are the greatest threat to this false monetary system. This system relies on the public being ignorant of its workings.
Exactly.
Please share this knowledge with everyone you know, because an informed public that fully understands the system can build a better future for generations to come. And now I leave you with this quote, widely attributed to a former director of the Bank of England. "The modern banking system manufactures money out of nothing. The process is perhaps the most astounding piece of sleight of hand that was ever invented. Banking was conceived in inequity and born in sin. Bankers own the earth. Take it away from them, but leave them the power to create money and control credit, and with the..."
So as you all know, Trump is on a battle with Jerome Powell, who is currently the chair in the Federal Reserve, board members. And Trump is trying to lower the interest rates, and Jerome Powell, of course, is not agreeing with lowering the interest rates because, according to Jerome Powell, it will cause an inflation and make matters worse. But Trump is saying that if you lower the interest rates, you are going to, what's going to happen, so when the interest rate is lower, it will stimulate buying, and it will stimulate the economy as well, and it will grow. People will have jobs, they will have more money to spend, and wages will go up. All right, my friends, that's the Federal Reserve for you. And in plain English, from one observant citizen to another. I'm still learning too. And if you've got thoughts, questions, or resources, drop them in the comment section, and I will be happy to learn from you. If you found this helpful, give it a like, subscribe for more, and share it with someone who's also trying to make sense of this economy. Thanks for watching. And like I always say, keep reading, keep listening, and most importantly, keep an open mind. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye bye.